Hello, it's Rosemary Balu here from ARTbop, and I'm with Robbie Levan, instrumentalist and musician from Tauranga, and we have the privilege this afternoon of speaking with Hank Marvin, who is going to be appearing with his fellow musicians with Gypsy Jazz at our Baycourt on the 18th of November. Good afternoon to you, Hank Marvin.
Hi, Rosemary.
Now, Hank, I have to confess, and I've told my producer and recorder, Dive Art Mater, and Robbie, that I was a fan of Cliff Richard and the Shadows many, many years ago, and that I still have somewhere in my house the sheet music to the young ones. I wanted to tell you that because the advertising that we have here refers to you as a legendary musician, and that I take it one of the aspects of being a legend is that not only are you such a long performing musician, but those early days no longer reflect the style of music that you perform.
Well, first of all, Rosemary, and it's Robbie, is it, with you?
Yes.
Yes. Hi.
Yeah, hi, Robbie. How are you doing?
Yeah.
First of all, you mentioned that you're a bit of a fan. Well, that shows you're either very gullible or you're a woman of taste. I'm not quite sure which. But look, this term legendary or legend, we tend to refer to as a leg end. Because it's bandied around in the case of some individuals that there's a certain support in their careers for that term, and that maybe they've been innovative or they've been influential. I suppose I can lay a certain amount of claim to that, but at the same time, my success in the music industry with both Cliff and the Shadows, and then with solo stuff, has been mainly through a Stratocaster, which you're referring to, a specific sound which I developed in a specific style, which was very successful around the world, and I'm very happy about that. But then I think you referred to what we're doing, say, for example, when we come to Tauranga. For about the past 12 years, I've just been having quite a lot of fun trying to play this form of music. It's based on swing music that was created in France in the 1930s originally, and it was an approach to jazz, swing jazz, but instead of using, say, trumpets, horn sections, it was all stringed instruments, violin, guitars, double bass, no drums, and it's a fun music to play for guitarists. It's quite demanding and demands a certain amount of improvisational ability, which I'm still struggling with. But also, it really is fun to play. We started playing this, as I said, about 12 years ago for fun, and a few people heard us play, and we did a couple of charity things, and then it grew from there, and people asked us to do real jazz gigs, festivals and jazz clubs and so forth. But if I just may say, Rosemary, we kind of approach this music as we've got more involved with it a little differently from most, because we have the other guys in the quartet and myself have different influences. We've got sort of jazz, blues, rock and roll, pop, classical, everything. And so when we're arranging the music, we try to approach it differently, in a different way from the way others approach it. So it's not so much of a jam session as such. It's quite structured. We try to use I have an accordion in the group, a wonderful player, and we work out arrangements between us as a group, and we have lines that we might play together in unison or in harmony, and we try to establish a really good structure of a tune, which also seems to appeal to those people who've been raised on rock and pop, because it's something they find very accessible, which we find encouraging.
Hank, I saw Joe Cocker in New Zealand being booed off the stage because he had developed a whole new show and played none of his greatest hits.
Yes.
Is that something that you have to deal with or have dealt with?
In this format, funnily enough, Robbie, no. When we've done jazz clubs or festivals or whatever, people don't expect us or me to come along and play shadow stuff. It's obviously not part of. It's not the way it's advertised. And a couple of years ago, well, it's 2 years ago this month, we went across to New Zealand, did 9 concerts. Greg Bartlett wanted to do this tour, and I was a little concerned for the reasons you've just mentioned.
Yeah.
I thought, well, if we're doing concerts and not jazz clubs, people might think, I'm going to play shadow stuff or whatever. But we made sure in the advertising that wasn't the case. And the encouraging thing for us, Robbie, was that the audiences that we played to, and we got the opportunity to meet a lot of them after the shows, signing autographs and CDs and so forth. They were almost all Shadows fans.
Yeah.
A few there were people who knew about Django Reinhardt and Stefan Grappelli and all that. They had a jazz background. But the interesting thing for us was the response to the audience. We had a standing ovation every night. And a lot of the people we talked to said, we've never heard this music before. We think it's fantastic. We loved it. In fact, some people, which was quite bizarre, said, well, why? And these were Shads fans. They said, I think we prefer this to the Shadows, which was a bit of a laugh for us. But look, that was a lovely experience for us to have that kind of response. But I know exactly what you're saying. And I think if it's advertised in the wrong way and that people think the art, you mentioned Joe Cocker. If he goes out there as Joe, if I went on tour with my band like I used to do in Europe and the UK, people know what to expect. If I went out there and played a whole, the 2 hours of gypsy jazz, they'd be very disappointed because that's not what they're buying. And we take great care to make sure that whoever comes to see these concerts, if anyone comes at all, that they will know this is what we're doing. It's not Shadows or anything like that.
You mentioned, or you were very polite about your influence, especially with the Shadows. Are you aware of how profound your influence was in New Zealand in particular?
No, not really. I mean, obviously we know we had success there and that people like what we did, but and perhaps like what I did as the lead guitarist. But no, I'm not what's the word? Deeply aware of how profound that was. No, I'm not, Robbie.
No, I immigrated from Amsterdam, where I was where I watched rockabilly explode, which was guitar based. In New Zealand, you didn't have that step, so you had social music being played either just strumming along or singing songs, or the local pianist playing dance music. And it wasn't until the Shadows, until Apache, that all of a sudden young kids realized there was another way of playing music. And so every village developed, every town developed at least 1 or 2 Shadows bands. And that changed the whole of the New Zealand pop music. So your influence in New Zealand has been very large.
Oh, well, that's nice to hear that. That's good.
Who else are you bringing with you in the band or the group that you're bringing to New Zealand? Because this is a New Zealand-wide and an Australasian tour as well, isn't it, Hank?
Yeah, well, it's only a short thing, Rosemary. I don't like to do big, long tours. I've stopped doing that, so I don't mind doing it just a sort of 9-10 concerts or something. But in the group, there's myself obviously playing lead guitar and Gary Taylor on rhythm guitar. We play special acoustic guitars. They're gypsy jazz guitars, which are made in the style of the old Selmers that Django Reinhardt used to play, but they're modern versions of that. And we have also just for interest for anyone out there who's getting on a bit in years, Gary was in a band called The Herd in England in the late 60s with Peter Frampton. And then he became a session guy playing rhythm guitar and bass guitar, and he had his own radio show in the UK and Radio 1 for a while. But he's a good musician. I've used him on a lot of my normal albums, which I've recorded over the last sort of 15 years, either playing rhythm guitar or bass, or sometimes both, depending on the track. And then we have on accordion Nunzio Mondia, who, as you can tell by the name, is from Wales, not. And he is a wonderful muser. I've used him quite a lot over the years on piano, keyboards, and accordion, funnily enough, on some of my albums. And he's a classically trained musician, very highly qualified, but has had a great experience in arranging live work, putting bands together, not small bands, big, orchestras and everything for different artists like Demis Roussos and all kind of people. But he's a wonderfully expressive player, and I have to say that I was never a fan of the accordion. To me, it was, gentleman was a person who could play the accordion but didn't. But in Nuncio's case, I mean, he honestly, he's got such an expressive feel with it and a great technique. And I've heard a lot of people who've heard us at gigs come up and say, wow, I didn't know that anyone could play and make an accordion sound like that. So he's quite something. And on bass, double bass, we have a local muso, Pete Jevons, who's one of our top local double bass players and bass guitarist and teacher. He plays a lot of jazz gigs in Perth, and he played on our last album, on most of the tracks anyway, which was called Django's Castle, and we're in the process of recording a new one, and he's playing on that too. So that's the group. It's a quartet, and it's good. It's a good bunch of guys to play with.
And we can expect the concert, the focus of the concert is definitely gypsy jazz.
Yes, it's our version.
And we won't
Rosemary,
be.
It's our interpretation of gypsy jazz. It's a swing music. As I say, it's a very accessible music. And I think one of the things which helps is that we have good tunes to play. They're actually tunes that people can relate to very quickly. And it's not like some of this far-out jazz where you have, 10-minute guitar solos or 15-minute sax solos. We don't do it like that. That's just like listening to paint dry. It's well structured, it's formatted. Yes, there are improvised solos, but we keep them relatively short. And it seems to mean that therefore it becomes more accessible and digestible for the audience. And but anyway, that's what it is. Yeah, that's the focus. That's our reason for being at the moment, musically.
Hank, I saw you at Samoa in 2010.
Oh, right.
So you have in fact played gypsy jazz with the legends of contemporary gypsy jazz music. How did that come about?
At the time I played with Patrick Soswara.
Oh yeah.
On the stage. I don't know if you remember Patrick, Robbie. He was a left-handed jazz player. Not a gypsy, or he looked like it. He had the little moustache, a la Django. And he invited me to play with them, and we played a version of Nivram on the stage at Samoa, which was quite a thrill.
Yeah.
I've got a video of that somewhere that someone sent me. But, and it was fun, and I had an opportunity to play a couple of years ago with Fapi Lafetin and Lola Meyer.
Yeah.
They were doing a gig there and asked me to come up and do a couple of numbers. Unfortunately, I had a not very good experience on that one, Robbie. I had to borrow a guitar. I borrowed one from Leo Eimers. You might know the Dutch guitar maker. Yep. And they didn't have any microphones for me, so I had to. It was a gypsy, a copy of a Dumont guitar with the F holes in it, like has the Selmer straight cutaway, but the F holes rather than a sound hole. But it had an internal pickup, so I had to plug it in. And of course, this was in the middle of the, before, there's no sound check. I just had walk on, plug in, and the sound that I got through the monitor was the most awful, thin electric guitar sound that came through. And it was horrible to play with because, you know, the instrument feels like an acoustic instrument, and that's the sound you want to hear.
Yeah.
And it had this thin electric guitar sound like it came out of a terrible French movie from the late 1950s. It was horrible. So it was very off-putting. But it was a thrill to play with those guys, though.
Yeah.
Robbie, any more musical focused questions for Hank while we're here?
Now, this may be an intensely personal question, but your trademark horn rim glasses, was that related to Buddy Holly in any way?
Oh, look, I had to wear glasses anyway, Robbie,
from
about the age of about 9. And, you know, the styles of frames changed over the years from when I was that age, from the what in Britain were called the National Health ones, those little round ones. I think John Lennon wore some for a while. National Health frames they were called. And then when, of course, Buddy had those photographs with him with those black frames on, I thought, look, that looked fantastic. It made a real statement. You know, some people used to say, oh, don't wear your glasses on stage. And, you know, I said, I'm blind, I'll fall over. And then others said, well, get frames that you can, you know, those metal frames that you can, and there's no frame around the bottom of the lens, and you know, you won't see that. I said, I don't care. I wear glasses, I want to see them. And of course, the fact that Buddy had those photographs taken with those quite bold frames on, those black frames, gave me the encouragement, if you like, to wear something similar. And then, of course, at his untimely death, I was kind of carrying the flag for spectacle wearers. And so I've always, you know, felt, well, it's a part of my image. People know me by this, and I've continued to wear them in different forms over the years, and still do.
Fair enough, too.
That was a question he has been dying to ask you. It's the one question that we discussed prior to the to our conversation.
I have to if I can, Rosemary, I have to mention a little, which I thought was an amusing little thing at the time. Where back in the beginning of 1963, we just finished a tour of Africa. We came back to the UK, and we found that the Beatles had a record at number 2 in the charts, a thing called Please Please Me. And I thought, what a great record. And we noticed that they were on tour there was Chris Montez, who had a number 1 hit with Let's Dance, Tommy Rowe, and then the Beatles. They were third on the bill, and we thought, oh, let's go and see this band, see what they're like live. So Bruce and I went to see them. And then we went backstage. It was funny, half-empty house. No one screamed at them. It was quite interesting. But I thought they were great, very raw, but a lot of energy. And then we went up to see them in the dressing room. And as I went up the stairs, John Lennon was leaning against the wall, and he had glasses on like mine. And as soon as he saw me, whip them off and put them in his pocket. And then he said later, look, he said, I wear them, but people keep saying I look like you, so I didn't want to feel embarrassed when he came in the room.
Well,
so anyway, look what happened to him.
Well, I think that we're really glad that you and your glasses, in whatever shape or form, are going to be here in Tauranga in mid-November. And just for people who will be listening to this, I'm going to repeat that it's gypsy jazz. It's the 30s, 40s Django Reinhardt influenced jazz that's going to be playing in Baycourt in Tauranga with Hank Marvin and his quartet. It's going to be at 7:30, and the tickets are available from Ticketek. And we would both like to thank you very much for your time in speaking with ARTbop. Thank you, Hank.
It's my pleasure, and thank you for the time. I like the opportunity. If you're available, pop around, Robbie and Rosemary, and say hello.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Bye-bye.
Okay, thanks, Rosemary. Thanks, Robbie.
Bye.